I'm the co-president of the Marin Chapter of CNPS and want to welcome you to our March public meeting. This is a special meeting. This is a real flower extravaganza from California and other places as well. We have 5 presenters, and we're going to start out with Madeline Kellner, who will share photos from South America and Central America, as well as California. And then we'll go to 3 presenters who will present on California. Oh, first, Madeline is a native plant enthusiast, a community developer, and an avid traveler. And then we'll go to 3 presenters who will show photos of California, and I think primarily Marin flora. First, Betsey Crawford, who's a landscape designer and environmental activist. And she has a website that you might want to check out on ecology and wildflowers and all things nature called The Soul of Earth, which if you Google, I think you can find. And Vernon Smith, who many of you know, Doreen and Vernon are longtime members of the chapter, and Doreen was for many years the rare plant chair. And her encyclopedic knowledge of Marin native plants helped Vernon find and photograph most of Marin's native species. Susan Weakley will follow Vernon. She's a San Francisco native who grew up in a ranch in Sonoma County, and currently she's one of the volunteer photo editors for Cal Flora. And then we're going to go back to an international presentation from Dana Swisher, who's a teacher and garden director at the Neil Cummins Elementary School. She's also the founder and director of Refugia Marin, a nonprofit devoted to fostering environmental stewardship. And she just returned from a trip to Mexico to observe, I believe, the eastern monarch migratory population in their winter roosts. And so she's going to show some photos from that Mexico trip. So let's get going. We have a lot of ground to cover, and I'll turn it over to Madeline. So Madeline, why don't you go ahead and share your screen?
Right, here we go. Well, good evening. I'm really excited to be able to share some of my favorite plants and want to thank Kristen for inviting me. I'm a regular poster on Facebook of plants and a lot of my work internationally, and it's so much fun to share this brief presentation with people that I know really love plants just like I do. Just a little bit of background. Clint and I served in the Peace Corps quite recently in our careers, Guatemala in 2016 to 2018, and Peru 2020, 2022, and 2023. So that's why I really wanted to do flowers and plants from the Americas. So I will have flowers not only from Central and South America, but I will be putting some in here that are local from our area here. So with that, the first page here, you'll see an Aristolochia that we just saw when we were in Guatemala. It's called Littoralis, and it is actually from South America, but we saw it in a butterfly reserve, and I just really loved it, even though it wasn't really Guatemalan, but it is a South American species. Okay, next slide. So probably the apple of my eye in my 27 months in Guatemala in terms of flowers that we found is this beautiful lady slipper. We saw maybe 2 or 3 of these. They're about 3 inches long and about 3 inches wide. It was a total surprise going down a trail toward a river in the Quiché department of Guatemala. Just one of the absolute prizes, I think, of our time. Never seen anything quite like it. To the right is a friend of many of ours. Clint and I visited Mount Tam a couple weeks ago, and I know people have been finding them now on the Bernstein Trail and other places, but we found many of these down on the trail towards Cataract. And it's just a real favorite, I think, for a lot of us. So I wanted to put that next to this beautiful lady slipper. Another orchid, the one on the left, we saw in Costa Rica. We were there in November, and this one was taken at Manuel Antonio National Park. It was a single plant that had fallen out of a tree and onto the ground. It was right near the beach at Manuel Antonio. It was the only one I saw the whole time we were in Costa Rica, but I just thought it was a beautiful orchid, about 2 inches long, 2 inches wide. On the right is an oncidium that we just saw in Guatemala. We went back to Guatemala 5 years after our service, and we're visiting a beautiful area called the Sierra de las Minas. And this was taken in a rainforest, and was a real lovely little surprise to find on our walk. This epidendrum on the left was one that we found in Costa Rica in a place called the La Selva Research Station. Some of you may know about this place. It's on the other side of the mountains toward the Caribbean. Very, very large tract of land. And this was just growing on a tree, just greeting us as we were walking along on a trail. On the right is an epidendrum as well, but this one was growing in the ground. We saw many of these on our last trip to Guatemala, and it was in the Baja Verapaz region, also in a cloud forest. And there were just so many of these in a sunny spot. Just a real treat to find this. On this slide, we have the Aristolochias. The one on the left, we found in Ecuador. We visited a friend early last year that has a farm in the Los Rios area of Ecuador, and just happened upon this. It was growing along the ground on the way to where they pasture their cattle. And this was about, I want to say about 3 inches long. So it was a pretty good sized Aristolochia. On the right, Aristolochia californica, right here from Samuel P. Taylor State Park. And by the way, ours are blooming right now in our backyard. So this is kind of prime time for Aristolochia. Next is a passiflora. This flower we found on the bluffs around Lake Atitlan in Guatemala. And it was about a quarter size of a quarter. And you'll see it has a little visitor on the top, a little katydid. And we were really kind of hard up for flowers on this last trip to Guatemala because it is the dry season. So whenever we saw anything that was fun, we snapped a picture. On the right is a composite, Verbicina. This is also about a quarter size, and we saw these all around Antigua, Guatemala, on the edges of Antigua, Guatemala, which is at about 5,000 or 6,000 feet. I'm sorry, I'm having a little trouble with this wheel, David. The senna that you see here, just to give you perspective, this is a bush about maybe about 5 or 6 feet tall at least. And the flowers are pretty good sized, about 2 inches wide. And it's a member of the pea family. Really, really lovely plant. And this was seen at Manuel Antonio National Park. On the right was a really close friend of ours from our time in service in Guatemala. We served in the highlands of Guatemala. And so on our trip to go back to visit family and friends, we saw a lot of these in bloom. This is a tree, a pretty good sized tree. The leaves are very large. I didn't capture the leaves here. And the flowers are large. The flowers are almost quarter sized, and they're a member of the borage family. They're very pretty. They border the Inter-American Highway all along through the highlands of Guatemala. This is the only cactus that I've included in the presentation. This one was found in a place called the Lomas of Lechay. Clint and I were in Lima for about 6 months of our last service. And Lima is a desert. And north of Lima, or all along the coast, are these things called lomas. And during the wet season, which is the opposite of our wet season, there's a lot of fog. And you'll see here all the lichen and the moss on this cactus. I just had to take a picture of it. I had to go down a cliff practically to get it, but it was really worth it. And then with that beautiful flower. On the right is another friend of many of ours, the trail plant. But I don't think I've seen very often when it has these seeds. I just thought it was a kind of a geometrical wonder. So I wanted to include that one in the slides tonight. We live on the flanks of Mount Burdell. It's in our backyard. We can walk right across the street and be in wildflower country. These are two pictures that we took last year during the floral bloom. The meadow foam on the left, and then on the right, the laia. Really, really favorite flowers that we have right in our own backyard. The Madeline elegans here was found in San Geronimo, but we also saw them last year in Sierra Valley, up in the mountains. And we have a little moth friend here in the middle of the flower. We didn't identify it, but we know it's a moth. Then on the right, phlox speciosa. This is from Cloverdale. There's a wonderful park. If you're not aware of it, it's called Clover Springs. Beautiful flora. And this is one of my favorite finds at that park. And then last but not least, Mendocino County has to have a place in the slides here. On the left, the Contonia. And I think we probably found this one at Jug Handle State Park. And then on the right, the firecracker flower, or Brodia. And these we saw in a couple different places, I think at Low Gap and also at the North Coast Reserve, if some of you are familiar with that one. So anyway, thank you for the opportunity to share, and I'm going to stop sharing and cede my time to the next presenter. Thank you.
Thank you, Madeline. Now we'll turn to Betsey Crawford and for her California photos, I think.
Yep. Yes, they're all, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
They are all California, from different parts of California. The first one, the first group, which all happened to be white, but that was not planned, are Marin, very local to Marin. I live in Larkspur, they're local to Marin. This is my backyard hike. When I moved here from New York 10 years ago, nobody told me that I was entering an iris addict's paradise. So I take dozens and dozens of iris pictures every year. So I'm very grateful when they do something really interesting like cascade across the trail. So that's what this was doing. It was actually falling across the trail with all of its leaves. So wonderful experience. This is the Hukuiku Trail in Larkspur. And another, there are many trilliums blooming in Baltimore Canyon every year, but this one happened to be growing sideways. So I appreciated its posing that way for me. Baltimore Canyon is like trillium heaven. And then this is from the Loma Alta Fire Road. It's a stitchwort, a sabulina. And this is either new to me or I just never focused on it before. And I love the way it was floating, kind of floating in the air with these very delicate stems and leaves underneath it, and tiny little buds, and they're tiny little flowers. And this is, again, a really common, lovely flower, so common that I appreciate it when it does something interesting, like this is a very pink one, it's hanging like a bell. So that's one of the things that I look for when I'm taking pictures. This is from the Harry Allen Trail in Kentfield. And this, I've seen these on Ring Mountain, but not as big as they were on Loma Alta, at least as I remember it. And I just love these with all their different formations and petals and little tiny flowers and dark dark stamens and the look they have, like they've been, sprinkled with sugar. So sticky rosin weed. And false baby stars. I know this, I was confirmed this is androsaceous with David Greenberg on our Facebook page, because he said that in Marin, the purple heart, it means that it's androsaceous, also from the Loma Alta Fire Road. And then as I was leaving the Harry Allen Trail that very same day, I found this beautiful sculptural buckeye just emerging from its, just the leaves just emerging. Now this group is from the Bringing Back the Natives Garden Tour in the East Bay, which is a wonderful tour. If anybody doesn't know about it, it's just amazing. Kathy Kramer is a force of nature and does an amazing job. And this is an allium species. So there were 2 days. One was the coastal East Bay and one was the inland East Bay. I think this was the inland East Bay. It's an allium species. It could be a cultivar because in the gardens they do use cultivars. And a very happy, healthy, full green coffee berry in almost full bloom. They're going to have a wonder. They did, I'm sure. This is from in Berkeley. And this was on the inland, the snowdrop bush. This is one of my favorite photos from last year because I just love the subtle form and softness of the flowers and the sculptural leaves and twigs. And it was a beautiful, beautiful plant. This is also one, I used to lecture about native plants back in New York, and with every slide I would say, this is my favorite plant. So it just got to be a joke, but this is one of my favorite plants. It's blue curls. It's so purple that it could be a cultivar, but the sign just said linatum, so that's what it is. I love these because they look like something Dr. Seuss would have designed. And again, at the end of the day, and the last of this group was this beautiful Dicentra blooming in a native plant garden in, I think it was a library in El Cerrito. And I went way at the end of the day because I knew it would be open even though the rest of them closed at 5. You can see that from the way the light is coming, practically sideways. And this group is from local, but not Marin, like Napa and Mount Diablo. And this group, Suzanne Weakley and I have a great system. She comes up with places to go and I drive there. And so several of these are going to be ones that I took, and trips that we took together. And this was the first time I had ever seen a fawn lily, not this particular fawn lily, but we went to Etna Springs in Napa and saw, I saw my first fawn lilies and saw this beautiful one catching the light. And then we went to Mount Diablo. Several of the following pictures are from Mitchell Canyon. I don't think this is the first time I saw the fairy lantern, but there were tons there. She's leading a hike in a few weeks, and it's just so, it's not a huge territory in the park, but it's so worth going. And then a little bit later, I went back and found this beautiful, not just this one, but a bunch of beautiful butterfly Mariposa lilies, which inspired me actually to do a whole essay on Mariposa lilies on my website. And also from Mitchell Canyon, purple sanicle, one of the few that I've ever taken that were mostly in focus because it wasn't windy, like Ring Mountain. But I just love this plant with its kind of otherworldly, just arrived from another planet look, and its beautiful, beautiful color. And this is as common a plant as can be in my backyard, and yet every year I take pictures of it because I just love it. It's so beautifully photogenic, it's so silky, and the colors are so subtle, and the form, they often form clusters that are really beautiful to photograph. And this was a first for me, a solanum, a purple solanum. I've seen white ones before, but this was my first purple one, and I just love the way the light was coming through it. And another trip with Suzanne to Lime Ridge to see the clay Mariposa lilies. This was an interesting exercise in focus because we got up to the area where they were, and you couldn't really see them for a few minutes. And then we saw one, and then we saw a few, and then we suddenly realized they were everywhere. It was having a super bloom last year. So it's an interesting insight into what happened, the way our vision, when we actually focus our vision, when something catches our vision and we focus it, how we see differently. And then this was a trip, I took a trip up to far northern California for an interesting reason, but I won't go into it here. And I was driving back roads, like logging roads and old dirt roads in Siskiyou County, and found wonderful plants. Starting with this I think it's a Green's Mariposa lily. I'd be delighted if anybody corrects me after this is over. Little tiny thing, like a little bit bigger than my thumbnail, and I almost stepped on it, and it just like a lot of Mariposa lilies, this combination of beauty and eccentricity. I just love them. And there was a lot of this really big, beefy buckwheat on these roadsides, and love this one for its thoughtfulness in matching its beetle to its outfit. And Frasera was brand new to me. I was actually chasing this butterfly, but it kept landing on Frasera, so that's how I learned what Frasera was. And this really, I've written about how rare blue flowers are, and these blue markings, these teal markings, are just almost unheard of in North America. So it was a fascinating plant. Gilia is not new, but I just love it. I love the way it catches the light and its shape, and just its beautiful structural formation. And then we went at the California Native Plants our chapter sponsored a walk in Lower Carpenter Valley and Page Meadows, also inspired by Suzanne, last July. And mountain coyote mint was everywhere, but this one hosting the beautiful forget-me-not moth was the one that I'm including here. And then, being from the Northeast, I asked Suzanne where one sees fall color in California, and she said the Eastern Sierra. So at the beginning of October, off we went, and we were in the Bishop Lee Vining, between Bishop and Lee Vining, basically. And this rabbit brush was everywhere. The roadsides were just blazing with it. It was this incredible orange color, and with the intensity of the sunlight and the way color is intensified at altitudes, it was amazing. And then there were lots of, I don't know if there were lots of them, but there were some of these asters left, which were very beautiful, intensely purple. And then to end, there was the gold that we went looking for in the Nar Hills. And it was we had an amazing and beautiful trip up there. And that's the end.
Betsey, thank you. I'm just curious how you got this black background. So you carry a black panel with?
I do carry a black cloth in case it's a hopeless background, like with the iris falling over the path, there was nothing but sand. But I also try, because I like dark backgrounds, obviously, but I like to try to get some character in the background. So I often do that in the camera, but leave a little bit of things happening. But as I say, if it's hopeless, I just pull out my black cloth and get rid of it.
Okay, thank you. Lovely photographs.
Thank you.
Next, we turn to Vernon and Doreen Smith.
Okay, so Doreen and I enjoyed the super bloom in Marin last year and went to several places, but because we could only share a limited number of slides, we just picked the ones from 2 places. So the first set are Mount Burdell in April, and then we'll switch to Point Reyes in May. So this one aspect of a super bloom is you got a tremendous number of California poppies and blue dicks that were evident on Mount Burdell. And I'll pass it over to Doreen to comment on the rest of the slides.
Okay, here we are with the form of Lindanthius douglasii that is on Mount Bedell. We will later do the form that's on Point Reyes that is differently colored. This is the most common color in Marin. There is very little Lewisia in Marin, but several years ago, somebody discovered a patch on Mount Bedell. And in fact, there are 2 patches on Mount Bedell, and it is usually pink where we have it, but in other locations you can get white ones. But this is the Mount Bedell one, and it's on serpentine. This is the tidy tips form that is on Mount Bedell, and I think it's the same one as was shown before. The difference between this one and the very similar other species we have is that this one is not hairy. That's the simplest difference. If you try to key out composites in Jepson and you don't know what you've got a whole lot of problems coming to your eyes and everything else. But anyway, this one is the form that's common on Mount Bedell, and often there's a great mass of them. This is one of the delphiniums that's on Mount Bedell. There are 3 species. This one has fewer flowers per inflorescence than the other 2, and it is somewhat later to bloom, and it's on serpentine. But the delphinium key isn't any fun either. The form of Goldfields there is keys out to gracilis, which was a split made from Californicum or Californica, because they're feminine. And before they were all called Lasinia californica, but somebody really looked into the form of the fruits, and they're different in this one from the other species, which is going to be shown, I think, from Point Reyes. This is a form of Leptosiphon parviflorus, which is very variable or hasn't been properly dissected by the taxonomists. As you can see, some of them have little red nectar guides on them, the ones on the left, and others do not, all in the same population. The form of Platysemon californicus is also variable in Marin. You can find some that are purely white petaled, others that are purely yellow petaled, and some that are both, just like these on the serpentine of lower slopes of Mount Bedell. Castanea densiflora is the one that we have in inland Marin. You don't find the other species in inland Marin, but you do find it on Point Reyes. And the main difference is in the leaves and in the form of the stigma. But since you know that you shouldn't find the other species in inland Marin, you don't have to worry. This is the Douglas's sandwort. It used to be called something else quite recently, but taxonomists are always researching somehow to change the name for hopefully very good reasons. This is very common on Mount Bedell. You can tell this one from the closest species to it is the back petal, which is like a little spur, called the Galea, is green or pale yellow. And the other species that looks just about like it has purple as a Galea. This is starting the Point Reyes one. Some people think the yellow bush lupin was introduced there, but other people say they have evidence that it occurs naturally as far north as Bodega. This is the yellow limnanthes that is out at Point Reyes. They do have the other species, other form, but if you get towards the point, they're all yellow. And last year I had never seen so many popular. There's a close-up. Okay, trifolium gray is very uncommon in Marin County. At the moment, I don't think has any rarity status. This particular one was taken near the entrance to the North Beach, but there's a larger population out on the Lunny Ranch, which I haven't visited for many years, so I don't know if it's still there. It's a very tall clover and it's very hairy, and in Marin, very uncommon. This is one of the few perennial native trifoliums in Marin County, and it has quite large flowers. And I don't know why they call it cow clover, because the cows do not seem to eat it and they seem to leave it. So that's all I have on it. This is real stitchwort, okay? Not field chickweed, but being British, I have knowledge of the closest European relatives of this. So I'll just give an English name, and if you don't speak English, well, whatever. This recently got a change from Cerastium arvensi, which is a more common circumboreal species. This one is perennial and has large flowers. This is most common out on the Chimney Rock Peninsula. And Weakley angustifolia is quite widespread in Marin. This happened to be one that had an extremely large flower. So Vernon photographed it. He did all the photographs. I didn't do any of them.
Except for the Point Reyes Beach one. That's
Oh,
yours.
okay, all right. He did put in one scene. I prefer scenery to close-ups, probably because I usually get the close-ups all out of focus. Point Reyes Lochelia has a really nice perfume to it if you just brush your hands across the plant. This does not damage it or stop it seeding. It's a perennial, it spreads. I don't know why it's not in cultivation, but then I'm not a native plant gardener, I'm a native plant fancier. This is another one of the Triflacerias. This one is a rare plant. Sometimes you can only find a few on Point Reyes, other years there are a great many of them. It's quite a nice, dainty plant, but it's most easily found on Chimney Rock Peninsula. This is the beach primrose. Of course, it's an evening primrose. It's not a real primrose. And the real primroses have 5 petals, whereas the this sort of primrose has only got 4 petals. And of course, it isn't blooming in the evening, but the name plant of the genus Camisonia has large evening opening flowers. And this is the one that it baffles some people why it's called witch's teeth. I don't know whether it's because witches are supposed to not brush their teeth properly and that they're all yellow or pink stained, but the witch's teeth bit is the form of the calyx, which you can't see because it's hidden by the upper yellow petals of the flowers. But when the flowers drop off and the pods form, you can see they're quite spiky in that part of it. This is very difficult to find. It's a rare plant of sand dunes on Point Reyes. This was very lucky for us to find one that was quite large, not a teeny tiny, covered in sand specimen.
Very difficult to photograph, actually, because the flowers are very small and the plant waves around in
And
the wind.
yes, it's a windy location too. And this is Brody-Aya, not Brodia, Brody-Aya. And you can tell this species from the other ones in Marin because the white things in the middle, which are staminodes, the infertile stamens, are curved in this fashion. All our other species, they are different looking. So the key to these Brody-Ayas is that you look at these staminodes in many cases. And this is our usual Sedalcia out on Point Reyes. It tends to be growing flattened to avoid the windiness, perhaps evolutionarily, but it has round leaves, sort of. And at one time, somebody tried to turn it into a different genus, but they didn't succeed. And it's the way you see it there, Sedalcia malviflora subspecies. Well, it may not be laciniated. Forget that. You can't see the leaves, but we had a little. We had a little disagreement over its taxonomy. We didn't. You agree with me? Carry on. And here's another form of Parviflorus, the ones that are out on forms, but so far they have been out as a variety or subspecies, but apparently nobody agreed with them, and you can get them in all shades from quite a dark pink to white. And this is the usual form of Lea platyclossa in Marin is like this, and the tips are tidy, and you can find this form on the bluffs above Chimney Rock, but you can also find all yellow ones near Bull Point, but they're all the same species. And this is one of the dandelion-like plants. There are quite a few of them. Somebody online worked out a key for them based on the form of the plant, which is very useful because if you try and do this one with gypsum, it takes quite a lot of work. And this is the large flowered form of Goldfields, which is perennial. So if anyone gets permission to get cuttings, it could be grown. Yeah.
Not supposed to.
No,
That's
you have
it.
to get permission. Thank you.
Thank you, Doreen and Vernon. Great tour. Next, we have Suzanne Weakley, who will also be showing photos from Marin and California, more broadly. Suzanne, you're muted.
No, she was out on that book.
I'm very sorry this is happening here.
Suzanne, you need to get rid of the menu in front of this slide.
I know how to do that, and it's blocked by the Zoom
But then you'll have to stop sharing and do it.
Yeah,
You can just move the Zoom photo out of the way too, or you can minimize it.
Okay.
just click, got it. I'm so sorry about this. I can't for some reason.
If you go down to the bottom underneath the picture, there's some icons, and the one that sort of shows a screen, if you click on that, it'll switch into slideshow. That one.
Looks like a little TV.
Okay. I'm so apologetic. I got somehow or another, I got booted out of my slides earlier, and obviously now finally I'm getting back in. So I'm going to hopefully try to make up some time here, but I want to thank everybody. Thank Dave and Kristen and everyone else for allowing me to show some of my photos here. And it should be interesting because Betsey and I have photographed the same plants, and so you're going to get a different perspective on some of these. Most of my photos, as it turned out, were taken outside of Marin. And so I thought I would talk about some of the places where they were taken, and also let you know how to get there. Etna Springs, you saw Betsey's wonderful fawn lily photograph. Mine is not nearly as good. But this is basically the reason to go to Etna Springs. If you want to get there, you just Google Etna Springs. There's only one road. You drive to the end of the road, park your car, and then start walking up the left-hand fire road. And I will say that we were a little early last year, March 18th. I would recommend going maybe a little more toward the end of March if you want to see them. The other thing, the other flower you'll see up there that's very sweet is the scarlet fritillary. Ritchie Canyon in Bothie Napa Valley State Park is another lovely spot to visit. It's Ritchie Canyon is basically there's a large trail that goes slowly uphill. It's an easy trail, and there are a lot of it's nice and shady. There are a lot of very nice and interesting plants along the way. Last year we saw at least a couple of different kinds of trillium up there. Lafferty Ranch is a private ranch on the slopes of Sonoma Mountain that has just recently been, I think, given to the county, and it will become a regional park, although that has not happened yet. So currently, to get there, you have to go through Land Paths, which is one of the nonprofits up in Sonoma County that administers the property. I did want to highlight the Midsummer Snell Valley Wildflower Preserve because I strongly recommend that next year the Marin CNPS chapter consider making a field trip out of this. It's an absolutely gorgeous place, huge serpentine area. You do need to, if you want to go there, you need to work through the Napa Valley CNPS chapter because it's private and the access is very restricted. But it's absolutely a gorgeous place, and I've been there 3 times now. Every time I've gone, I've seen a different selection of flowers. And so this is Diogenes lantern. This Calochortus happens to be a pretty common one in Napa Valley and Sonoma County. But here's another Calochortus up there, and there's actually a third one I wasn't able to photograph this last time. The Calochortus vestae that you'll see, which is the coast, I think it's Coast Range Mariposa lily. This one reminds me of the Oakland Star Tulip on Ring Mountain, but it's a different species. Very pretty, I think. Ethereal Spear, last year there was literally a super bloom of these up there, really spectacular. And then this is another place where you can see the bitterroot, which Vernon and Doreen just mentioned as on Mount Verdell. The Cosumnes River Preserve is another place that I wanted to mention because it happens to be, the Cosumnes River is the only river in California, though, on the western, coming down the western slope of the Sierra Nevada, that has not been dammed. So what you have is this incredible area of sloughs and marshes and basically riparian habitat that's absolutely gorgeous, a wonderful place to visit. And there's also a valley oak savanna, so you want to make sure you visit it after the valley oaks have leafed out. And the other thing that I saw there this last time was a Downingia. They list 5 different species on their plant list, and I don't know which one this is, but they're such fun to see these little babies. Now Mitchell Canyon, as Betsey mentioned, we're going to be, I think she mentioned, there'll be a field trip to Mitchell Canyon at the end of April. And so I wanted to show you just a few of the flowers that we'll see up there. It's really a wildflower hotspot, and it's a very easy place to visit. Weekends tend to be crowded, but there's a really nice fire road to hike. The fairy lanterns, this is a completely endemic to Mount Diablo, and it's distinctive. You can tell the difference between it and the Calochortus amabile by this really pale, kind of pale green cast that is on the tops of the petals over the globe itself. Anyway, just a gorgeous plant, I think. Here are some of the others. I'm going to flip through these kind of fast. This is the second kind of Calochortus that you can see over in Mitchell Canyon. It usually blooms a little bit later, maybe 2 or 3 weeks later than the Mount Diablo globe lily. I'm hoping, because we're going on April 29th, that we'll be able to see both kinds, but we may only see the first one. But it's a really sweet Calochortus, I think. And then Betsey just showed you a photograph of this plant. I took the photograph I have that was in focus. I took from a slightly different angle, but it's another really interesting type of Calochortus, and I could certainly tell people how to find it. It's a little complicated, but anyway. And then, of course, we had to have a photograph of our favorite Calochortus over here. I think of this flower as being sort of the mascot of the Marin Chapter. Anyway, here it is, and it was very much a very happy last year up in Ring Mountain. But these Calochortuses, I have to thank Madeline Kellner, because Madeline, you told me where these were, and I was, very dubious, because, she said downtown Novato by the railway, by the railroad avenue. And I was going, what? Well, sure enough, I got over there, and there was a whole hillside, literally a super bloom of these wonderful calocordyces. And it was just absolutely delightful to find them in that type of environment. So thank you again, Madeline. This was another surprise from last year. I had never seen Labrador tea in bloom before, but literally there was a super bloom of these plants in the Tamales Bay State Park. Absolutely gorgeous. You can kind of see in the background these fuzzy white puffballs in the background. Your shrubs were covered with these flowers. It was just amazing. Now, Bull Point, I've photographed here what I think are sort of the usual suspects. You know, there several very rare plants that you can find at Bull Point. I'm sure many of you have already been there. This leptosiphon is one of them. And of course, this is the star of the show, the Lilium maritimum, a 1B1, very, very rare. Another really interesting plant that you'll see over there is the Sierra Bog orchid. And I understand that this is from Doreen, who can please correct me if I'm got this wrong, but that essentially this is what they call a disjunctive species, because you have the same species can be found in the Sierra Nevada, which I think is just a really interesting concept. And then finally, the point raised checker balloon, which is also a very, very rare plant. Now, I just want to say briefly a couple of words about Lower Carpenter Valley. This was one of our field trips last summer. Lower Carpenter Valley is managed by the Truckee Donner Land Trust. And if you can go there without being on a formal outing, but I would suggest, if at all possible, that you try to connect with the El Dorado CNPS chapter, because they lead trips up there at least once a year, sometimes a couple of times a year. And it's an incredible area. It's only been open since 2020. And I think, and anyway, there's just a lot to be seen up there. These lilies in particular. There was another plant that I photographed up there. And then last, Page Meadows, which Betsey also mentioned. This is an area that's about 2 miles southwest of Tahoe City. It's a series of meadows that's all sort of interconnected with trails, very easy to access. And if you just Google Page Meadows parking, that's where the trailhead is. So it's relatively easy to find. And there are we found a lot of interesting plants there. Checker mallet, Horkelia. Now, Doreen just mentioned the Horkelia that are in Point Reyes. I don't know if this is as rare as those, but I thought it was a very interesting plant. And then finally, this is basically the last flower that I photographed in 2023 over at Black Diamond Mines. Thank you very much. And I'm really sorry about all the mix up at the beginning.
Well, thank you, Suzanne, and especially for the locational information. We've got a lot of potential field trips out of your show.
Right, but Missimer is really a fabulous place, and definitely worth the extra effort to try to get up there.
Can you ask everyone to put their information in the chat? Like Suzanne, thank you everyone so much, and put your website maybe or how to reach you in the chat.
Suzanne, you're muted. And also, would you stop your share?
Yeah.
Now we turn to Dana Swisher, who will take us to Mexico and monarchs.
All right, so I went, whoopsie. I went down to Mexico in, let's see, February, and to see the overwintering monarchs in Mexico. And it was quite an experience. So as many of you know, we have the western migration of monarchs that come out to our coast, and then we also have the eastern migration, and the eastern migration of monarchs goes down to Mexico. So this is a picture of the monarchs clustering on one of the fern trees down there. We were lucky and had quite a bit of sunshine and warm days, and so the butterflies were quite active. So the monarch butterfly sanctuaries in Mexico, the ones we visited were in Michoacan. So if we flew into Mexico City and drove west up into the mountains, we were on the photograph on the map on the right, we went to it's a biosphere reserve in called El Rosario. And that is at least, I think it was around 11,000 feet. And then we went up to Chinchua, which was 11,600 feet. So it's very high up in altitude. And apparently the monarchs need it to be cold, so they stay in diapause, which means they're not reproducing or eager to reproduce. And but it's humid enough, there's enough moisture that that it works for them. So it keeps them in diapause, but also has enough moisture. So it's a combination of climate effects. So Michoacan is in the state of Mexico. We visited 2 sanctuaries. One was El Rosario and the other was Sierra Chinchua. The other one we would have visited didn't have any monarchs. This actually was a low number this year for monarchs due to a number of factors. There's a drought in Texas that affected a lot of the monarchs last year. It's also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So just to give you perspective, so this map shows you that the eastern monarch migration goes from all the way down here in Mexico, all the way up goes through Texas, and then goes to, I know they get them in Minnesota and Michigan and Canada, so they go all over the place. I guess the Rockies block them, and so then we have monarchs on the west side of the monarchs that head to the coast of California, and to overwinter, which is a different group. This is just a picture from up right as we're coming down from El Rosario, looking out into the mountains in the state of Mexico and Michoacan. This is an area that has a lot of avocado orchards. So it's a very rich agricultural area, but they've worked really hard to preserve the habitat for the butterflies. And you can just see how beautiful it is. I hadn't been to Mexico very often, and I thought of it as just like a very dry, deserty place with cactuses. So this was eye-opening for me, that it's just this beautiful, very diverse, biodiverse country. So I'll see if I can say it right. The Ayamal fir forests. These are the trees. They're very, very tall, straight trees with lots of little pine needles. Those are the fir forests the monarchs overwinter in. But so it says they're an ideal, they provide an ideal microclimate for the butterflies, but any tree with something that they can grip onto, and a lot of them can grip onto it at once, that is sheltered from the wind but has enough sunlight, is a good overwintering location for monarchs. They're very adaptable as long as the situation is right. So this just shows you they have paths going up, but then you have to hike very far up. So we actually took horses up and then we walked farther up. The picture on the right shows a lot of the monarchs actually clustering on the trunk of the tree, which I thought I had never known before, that they actually will cluster on the side of the tree, and then up in the left corner they're clustering in the branches. And they actually, like, enough of them, they're very, very light, but enough of them will cluster together that they actually make the branches droop down. And then this is what I'm going to do next year for my Christmas tree. I'm just going to get some butterfly decorations like that. I think that's beautiful. They just were landing everywhere because it was sunny. This is just some nice photographs of them. And then here's some more of them clustering together in little batches. There was many, I have many pictures of them puddling. This is them puddling on the ground. They're getting nutrients from the soil and some water. They don't nectar, they don't feed while they're overwintering. They just get water. And even I have a photo farther down that shows one on a flower. The flowers up there apparently are not giving a lot of nectar. So what they're getting from the flowers is actually water. So they basically are surviving on what they've the fat they've gained from nectaring on their way down or before they started migrating. And then when they come down here, they're basically just surviving on water and minerals. So here's more puddling. This is them on the ground. So at one point, the third day we were there, we just hit, they were actually migrating from the top of the mountain down to another segment of the mountain to get ready to start their migration back up north. And so we were walking through butterflies, just, it was amazing. We were like making sure that everybody was watching their feet to make sure they didn't step on monarchs. I mean, they were everywhere. And the photographs don't do it justice. It was just like a magical experience. So here's the picture of the monarch I was talking about on the flower. And apparently I said, oh, they are getting nectar. And said, no, those flowers aren't producing much nectar. It's just moisture for them. These are just some butterflies showing off. So pretty. They were all over, everywhere you looked. They were on top of plants, on trees, on the ground, in the air. And then here are, on the left is a photograph of a monarch that had been preyed upon. And up north, they don't have very many predators. In fact, I don't think we have any predators up here, but down in Mexico, they do have predators, the black-headed grosbeaks and the black-eared mouse. So the grosbeaks will pick them off when they're clustering in the trees. Whenever it gets cold enough, they don't move. They won't move and they're sort of helpless. And then if they fall to the ground and they can't get off the ground, then the mice pick them off. But it's a normal, apparently like a normal predation. It's not out of whack and it's expected. And then on the right is just an example of a female monarch and a male monarch. The female, if you look closely, has darker lines, veins, and the male has thinner lines, and then he has two little dots down here. So those are ways that you can tell the difference between monarchs. We were on the trip, I was on the trip with some experts. One of them was Wendy Caldwell from Monarch Joint Venture. And she was saying that, I was asking about how, humans have fingerprints that distinguish us and things like that. And she said, well, actually, the monarchs, every monarch has a different pattern of the white spots, which I didn't realize. So I thought that was pretty cool. And I think is that my last slide? It might be my last slide. Let me see. I think so. Let's see. Yep, that's my last slide. So anyway, oh, I do have a little, if I can make it go, I do have a video. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Okay, so this just kind of gives you a feeling of how many there were. So you're just looking up and they're just flying everywhere. I don't know if you can tell. And that's walking up the path and they're just flying everywhere. So very different than our experience on the West Coast. So it was really like being in a magical forest. I think I took some slow-mo ones too to kind of like watch. They would go right into the camera and it was great. So anyway, that was my experience, which was fantastic. I highly recommend heading down there if you ever can.
Thank you so much, Dana. I didn't realize before tonight that they took no nutrients in that during the whole winter sojourn down there, which really puts in perspective the importance of the resources on the flight path.
Exactly. Yeah. They take nutrients from the soil, the minerals from the soil and the salts, but they don't they don't get a lot of sugar.
I didn't realize that there was no possibility of recovery if they didn't make,
Make it.
it didn't put on enough fat to make it through the winter down there.
Yeah, a lot of them fail for a variety of reasons. Some of them have the OE virus and then they're not able to make it, and some of them just aren't fat enough.
We have some time for questions, if anybody, or comments, if anybody has.
What's going on? Want me to take that out of the room?
I don't see any. So again, I want to thank our presenters. What a wonderfully diverse and high quality set of photographs and narratives. This has been a real kind of what I call homegrown experience of local photographers and naturalists, and I've just been really impressed with the quality of the photographs and what I learned about plants tonight. So thanks so much.
Oh, okay. I wanted to say one thing I forgot to say about one of the pictures. When the predators eat the butterflies, I forgot to point it out, but you would have noticed the abdomen is missing, and that's all they eat because the poison is in the wings and not in the abdomen.
Interesting.
Yes. So I thought that was fascinating too.
Hey, this is Aurora. I could make a comment. I've seen that predation here happening.
Oh, you have? Where?
Oh yeah, we saw it really badly. I was with Mia Monroe in Bolinas, and we saw a site where some of the trees had been cleared, and so there was more of an opening. It had been really a much more enclosed site, but it had gotten opened up and more exposed. And so I think it was mockingbirds or crows. It was corvids, definitely. Mockingbirds, crows, or jays, but they had exactly figured out that they could snatch the abdomen and it wouldn't be as bitter. Because if the bitterness is in the wings.
The toxin is in the wings.
Yeah, but there's also predation from ants.
Oh, interesting.
When they're in the clusters. So there is predation here.
Okay.
And that's part of why, this whole idea of potentially that you can, right? You not only do you influence their, like taking them out of the diapause, if you have the milkweeds near their overwintering sites, rather than, right, as we've learned that you're not supposed to put the milkweeds near the overwintering sites on the coast, but to keep it on the inland because you knock them out of diapause. But also there's this idea that you might also the chemistry of the milkweeds might lead predators towards them or something.
Okay.
Thoughts?
Yeah, I didn't realize we had predation here. I knew that. I only learned about it, the ones in Mexico. So thanks for that.
Let me tell you about next month's presentation. We're going to have a presentation on the new Bowman Canyon Preserve, which has been added to Marin County Parks. John Campo, who's the planning director, and Julian Geoghegan, who is a vegetation specialist from Marin County Parks, will describe the spectacular flora of Bowman Canyon. And one who's been out, I've been out there in the spring, and it is spectacular. If you don't know where it is, it directly adjoins Mount Verdell to the northwest. And so they're also going to be talking about their recreation planning for the preserve, because it does adjoin Mount Prudel and will be connected to it, and they've done a lot of environmental work in thinking about the trail system. So stay tuned for that one next April. I want to also let you know that the Marin Chapter's spring plant sale is coming up April 4th to 8th. So if you're in need of plants, I encourage you to sign in as early as possible on the 4th when it opens up. You can go onto our website and find out more information about it. But this is truly like almost an online auction, because we have a limited supply, and there's kind of a premium in terms of variety of getting there early. So I encourage you not to wait till the end of the sale if you're in need of plants. So want to thank you again, and we hope to see you next month. So good night.